Recently, my wife and I attended a one-day seminar on marriage, which enabled us or trained us to teach a particular paradigm, particular marriage course, not paradigm, but particular marriage course. And they said a few things which I found very interesting and not intuitive, and I wanted to share them with you. And the first thing that amazed me was that they said, even in good marriages, people will agree on an average of about 67%, they will disagree on average about 67% of the time, or 7% of things in their life they will disagree on. Even in good marriages, this is an average for all marriages. And so the point they made was it's not a question of compatibility in this sense, because as two individuals, there's a certain level or a certain limitation or a certain threshold of compatibility that, it may vary slightly, but there's many, many incompatibilities in a marriage because people are different. You may be Vata and she is Kapha. You like it warm, she likes it, or maybe she's Pitta. She's always hot, you're always cold. So you're always turning the heat up and she's always turning the air conditioning up. It's just, it's a physical thing. It's natural. And in the same way, personality-wise, culture-wise, in so many ways, you'll find differences. Of course, we say, well, you should do compatibility charts to get married because the more closely you resemble one another. Well, that's not the right way. So the more compatible you are, the better. But there's a limit to compatibility because we're individuals and we're opposite sexes, and there are so many differences. So they said the differences are not the problem. Even arguing is not a problem. It doesn't have to be a problem. It's how you resolve the differences. It's how you argue. It's how you're left after the argument. It's how you're left after the unresolvable differences are discussed. Their point was that there are going to be certain differences that you have, certain problems you have, that will never be resolved. You are a certain way, it's your nature, you'll always be that way. And even though you can give in to some degree, you're never going to agree to certain things. You're never going to want to do certain things. You're never going to see it in a certain way because it's not who you are. I'm a very individualistic person. I like to be alone. I think for myself. I tend to be quite independent. That's my nature. I don't like being told so much what to do. I like to figure out how to do it. That's my nature. My wife has her own nature. Slightly different than that. It's always going to be that way. And so certain of those natures, when they come together, they don't gel well. But it doesn't have to be a cause of problems in the marriage. We just have to learn how to navigate those differences in a way that it's not a problem. So when we understand, okay, this is what I'm like, and this is what I need, and this is what I want, and this is what you're like, this is what you need, and this is what you want, it's always going to be different. And we learn to accept and navigate around those differences. We were recently in Hawaii, and I grew up by the beach. And we stayed right across the street from the beach with some devotees. And so we got to walk on the beach quite regularly. And so I said, isn't the beach nice? And she said, it's nice, but I like the mountains. So we found a mountain. And we drove all the way up to the mountain. It was much cooler than it was at the beach. And my wife loved it. And I was like, yeah, this is nice, but the beach is nicer. And she was saying, no, this is so much nicer. And I said, how could you think this is nicer? And said, no, why do you think the beach is nicer? Because she grew up in the mountains and I grew up on the beach. So obviously, these are differences which will always be there. They're never going to go away. This is just what she likes. So does it have to be a problem? Of course not. It's only a problem if you make it a problem. And I see a lot of things in marriage where couples will come to me and they'll try to deal with this problem or difference, and I'll tell them it's not a problem unless you make it a problem. It's just you're this way and he's that way. It doesn't have to be a problem. But if you're thinking, no, everything has to be the same and she has to do exactly what I want, the way I want it, how I say it, it's not going to happen. So you deal with it you navigate it. And so how you resolve differences and some differences you must recognize are not going to be resolved. And that's part of the way you resolve them is by recognizing they're unresolvable and we both have to accept and live with them. So I thought that was an amazing insight because I intuitively didn't think that way. I always thought it was about compromise, giving and taking, which it is. But there are certain things, there won't be any compromise. It's just, this is how it is. This is how we are. So in future daily videos, I can share some other points that I think would be helpful for you.